Chapter 8, and we're going to talk about why do economies grow. And before I discuss that, I just want to remind us that we're in macroeconomics, and we've already discussed two of the three main issues in macroeconomics in Chapter 6, and that was inflation and unemployment. Now we're on the third, and that's economic growth. And to illustrate the importance of economic growth, I want to go ahead and show you some statistics here. This is from my Econ 215 class, but I think the illustration is really good. And that is, we're going to look at some areas in the world, and we're going to look at GDP, gross domestic product, growth over time we're going to use 1700, and we're going to look at 2003. Now, when I see gross domestic product per capita, I'm going to be controlling I'll be using $1990. So all these figures have already been adjusted for inflation. So in 1700, the per capita GDP in the USA was 527. Notice that in China it was actually larger. It was 600. And you can see from Western Europe they had almost double what the USA did. And notice that in 2003 they have less. It's kind of interesting. And in India, notice that it was about the same in the USA and India, the per capita output in the USA and India in 1700, and now it's significantly different. But I'm going to pick on two countries here just to show you the difference in what happens when you have different rates of growth and output. So let's just pick on USA and China now. So we have $527 per capita GDP in 1700, and then in 2003 we have $29,037 per capita GDP in the USA. Then in China in 1700 we had $600 per capita GDP, and then in 2003 we had 4,609. Now, if you do the math, the growth rate per capita was 1.34% in the USA, and it was approximately 0.70% in China. So that's a difference of about 0.64%. Now, that's kind of fascinating because when you look at just a small difference in the growth rates, we end up with a huge difference in the per capita GDP over time. That's about a 6.3 times as much in the USA than China. So what that says is just a small increase in economic growth, if you compound it over about 300 years, causes a very, very large difference in actual output. So what this says is that Americans live a substantially better standard of living than the average citizen in China in 2003. Now, I picked on those countries for another reason also, is that China just recently has had an extraordinarily strong economic growth. So I would suspect that this difference is going to close very quickly over the next few years. Now notice that places like Africa, who in 1700 wasn't significantly different than America. I mean, it was a little bit, but not too much. And then now, look what happened to Africa. They only have a per capita output of 1,549, and the USA has the 29,037. So again, just a relatively small difference in growth rates can cause a very substantial difference in standard of living over time. So in this chapter, we're going to be looking at why do economies grow, and just again, a good understanding of why economies grow will help us understand possibly why some countries are so much better off than others.